Well, let's talk about NFTs, because this is a topic that I'm quite passionate about, that I like to talk about, like to write about, almost because there's so much confusion or people that really don't understand it. Unfortunately, the word NFT has been polluted because people see that someone's paid $2.1 million for a JPEG of a monkey. Bored Ape. And I wrote about this, you probably saw it. I had a pretty successful post. And most people are just like, a fool and his money is easily parted. But it's not that simple. It's not that simple, because yes, you are buying a photo, and yes, that photo, I can screenshot it and I can have it on my phone, or you can email it. But you could also say, well, if I, get a high quality picture of the Mona Lisa and print it out and put it on my wall, do I own the Mona Lisa? No, I do not. Okay. Realistically, it comes down to a couple of things. Number one, it's a digital flex. So you might have a Rolex, you might have a Ferrari, you might have a Monet or a Picasso on your wall. But in the digital age of the people who've grown up in the digital web, who have this very acute, value for digital assets, that's your massive digital flex. And you can now have that as your Twitter handle, your LinkedIn, your Discord, or whatever. And people know that you're a baller because you can afford, and that you have bought, or you were smart enough to buy this really early. And, and what does it do? It gets you access to this virtual club of people who have the same thing. And I've had multiple conversations with people who have, any of these very expensive NFTs. And they've told me, yeah, I paid $100,000 for it, but I've made several $100,000 out of it because it gets me into circles. It opens doors, it closes deals, and it gets me invited to parties on yachts and hanging out with those people that would never, ever happen. And getting me into that circle is priceless.
Are you saying that you just bought into a Masonic lodge? That's what it sounds like to me. Do they give you a funny handshake when you buy your first NFT? I don't know.
I certainly don't buy, $1 million NFTs. I wish I could, but I'm fascinated by the people that do.
Yeah, sure.
I am in the industry. I'm reasonably deep, but what I would tell you is the deeper I get, the more I realize I don't know. Because if you look, the NFT industry has done a remarkable, flip-flop up and down over the last little while. 12, 18 months ago, OpenSea was doing $40 billion on their platform, and then that collapsed to like $2 billion or something like that. Okay. Yeah. But people kept buying NFTs, and I suppose you could call them beanie babies or whatever you want. But what's absolutely crazy is what these communities are buying in. And I saw one not long ago, and the website was like, you scrolled once and you were at the end of it. It was like 2 pages. And there were these squiggly, funny characters with funny faces. And it was like, these are the things. Here's the link. Roadmap. Not nothing, but no promises. That was the roadmap. And the guy sold 8,888 of these things.
Wow. Yeah.
And they sold out. And I'm kind of going, how do I
get? We're in the wrong business, Colin.
Sort of, I know, but it's also very, very difficult because there's been a lot. Because I've done this. There's been a lot of cash grabs in the industry. I can't remember the name of this. One of the rappers came out and he made this big fanfare and I'm selling NFTs. He sold like 100 of them. It was a complete disaster because people see what you're trying to do. And if you're not in the community and doing what the community wants and feeding them in the right way, and the person, if it's a celebrity NFTs are, just not hitting it like they used to. Snoop did very, very well out of it. He made $44 million in one drop with Gala Games, and he made $22 million in one day. A very close friend of mine knows him very, very well. His line to me was, "I'm shitting money," is what he said. He's made more money in NFTs in the last few years than in the rest of his entire music career. But he also said, well, I've just become CEO of Death Row Records. He goes, I'm taking that music off Spotify and Apple. And the guy said, why? It was on a podcast. And he goes, what about the people that want to listen to your music? He goes, what about me who made that music? Am I not entitled to, making money off that? He goes, oh, you do. And he goes, you want to own my music? Is buying a CD owning music? No. Is having a Spotify subscription owning music? No. if you want to own my music, you can own a fractional ownership of that NFT, and you can have it, and you can own it, and you can trade it, and you can make money off it. That is the vision that he has. And there's some really interesting stuff happening in the space.
I think when you hear the stories of people that made it big, but wrote their contract with the record industry early in their careers, they pretty much always regretted it. And the idea that you could potentially bake in a much more equitable value portion in those stages, and using something like NFTs or the blockchain to track that, then yeah, absolutely, I can see how important that could be. I think for me, I've sort of been quite cynical of them because it felt a bit like musical chairs. I mean, people were getting at the stock market, they're buying crypto. Crypto was wobbling a bit, they were buying NFTs. They were on to the next thing, and by the time punters like myself hear about them, it's like it's too late. You know, once it hits the mainstream, the real money's been made, and they're on to the next one. So the whole thing's a bit of a house of cards. I think my concern was, I mean, I buy art. I bought many paintings over the years, and I grew up in a house full of art and paintings, and I'm grateful for that. I never bought an NFT, but the flip side of that, I know a lot of people that were buying NFTs who'd never bought artwork from any other source, which made me think it was the whole tulip fever, fear of missing out things. And I mean, over and above, you know, when they say never buy a piece of art that you don't like for its own sake, and that if you could never sell it again, would it give you that amount of pleasure over time? I don't think you can make the same case for the NFTs, although I understand that same thing with your friend in the Rolex. When he walks into a business meeting and shakes hands with somebody wearing, you know, in the Rolex club, then there's that little invisible confirmation passes between the two of them. And so I understand the utility of paying membership for certain clubs. I just choose not to frequent these clubs, as Mr. Marks may have put it slightly more pithily. Yeah, it's intriguing to me. I've sat it out. I'd rather put my money elsewhere, I guess.
Yeah.
But I can see why people do enjoy it, and I can see that the blockchain more than the NFT. I mean, the other concern, of course, was the minting and the gas fees, but I understand that's becoming cheaper.
Yeah,
and slightly
I mean,
more
I think they've
environmentally
sort
friendly.
of mostly solved these problems. I mean, look, the way I talk about it is that since the beginning of time, people have collected things. They've collected coins. They've collected stamps. They've collected sports memorabilia. They've collected baseball cards. Baseball cards. You know, what's the difference? You know, it's just virtual baseball cards, records, all of that sort of stuff. There is a psychological effect in having and owning something.
Yeah.
And now we're moving into this sort of digital world. Does that mean that, oh no, sorry, you know, that's all out the window? No, it doesn't. It just, you know, means that it's different and it's evolving. You just have to look at how many kids, any parent who has kids from, I don't know, 7 to 17, they're buying skins in games like Fortnite, and they're using V-Bucks in Roblox. And, you know, I heard a fairly depressing story the other day about a single mother with 2 kids who could barely pay the rent and was working 2 jobs. And her kid is at her all the time. I want $10. I want $10 because I want to buy these things. And that's all the kid wants to spend the money on, because that's where they see the value. And, you know, we as old fogies in comparison can't really judge, because kids just sort of see value in different things. But also, I was talking to Sebastian in Sandbox, and he was just like, look, you can go buy a pair of shoes and then, you know, a year later they're wrecked and you have to throw them out. Whereas you can buy a pair of shoes in Sandbox or anything, and, you know, you'll have it forever. You're never going to lose it, and you can sell it to someone else. And maybe a shoe is a bad example.
If the intrinsic value comes more from your standing within the community, and if that moves away from, you know, if it becomes last season's goods, and the idea that, God forbid, you should ever wear the same dress to 2 different weddings, we're in this completely disposable economy that's you know, by its nature unsustainable.
I think we're in that already.
At least, well, yeah. I mean, at least it's a benefit. It's okay, so it's digital, so the footprint is substantially less. But I would imagine the tastemakers are always keen to move you on to the next thing, and there'll be financial pressures in a way to separate from your cash as never before. So I'd be wary of following the herd on that. I mean, the kid badgering the mom, all right, that $10 to buy a skin is again, paying for membership into a club, but I'm just left thinking, you don't have a stake in that club. You're at the whim of other people, and it can move quickly. And what happens when it goes up to $20? In the same way, I mean, kids going into school with the wrong brand of shoes, or going into the business meeting with the wrong brand of watch. I just feel like you can't win at that game, and if possible, I choose not to play it. And I'm slightly concerned that kids are doing that. But I think there's an element of we need to get a grip on the things that we do value in society. And just because we have the urge to collect doesn't mean it's good for us. And sometimes it's better avoided. But yeah, money to be made, that's for sure.
Let's talk